Welcome to iPen Podcast, Interviews and Conversations. Here we bring entrepreneurs and their business to their audience and communities as well as ours. We welcome and connect with them to share who they are and what they do. Authors, entrepreneurs, we extend the invitation to promote your business here on our podcast and in iPen Magazine. Your article, your story, your promotions, how you can connect with others, a new audience, a quarterly magazine presented online for all to view and subscribe to. For articles, ads, and subscriptions, please contact ipendesigns@gmail.com. For your viewing, you can see past articles, past interviews on www.nanettembuchanan.com. Welcome to the show. Every time you think you got it right, you get it wrong. So, good evening, everybody. How are you? Welcome to iPen Visions Podcast, Interviews and Conversations. And I am Nanette Buchanan, and I'm working with Felice Reeves, my co-host and partner in crime. And it's hot. It's hot, y'all. It's hot here in North Carolina. And I ain't even going to ask her how hot it is in Texas because Texas gets hotter than it does here. So I'm quite sure she's had a hot day too. But I hope you're all relaxing. And we have a great show for you tonight with a young author. And we want to invite her in and show her how we do things here and how our conversation goes. But before that, I got to bring in Felice. So let's say hello to my co-host, Felice Reeves. How are you, sweetie?
Hello. I got to share a little secret with you.
It's not hot there?
Well, I snuck into Georgia over the weekend.
Oh my goodness. So you're not even where it's hot. You went somewhere else.
No, it's so here was 96 here, so
Wow. Well, we hit 100 here in Old Fayetteville.
Oh well,
we hit 100. So, but our guest is from Fayetteville as well, which is unusual for our show that we have a local author who's right here in Fayetteville. She's in the area. So, but she's traveled all over. So she's used to the heat. We ain't even going to acknowledge that. She's probably been some places that we ain't been. So we're just going to acknowledge all of that with her work as well. So for all of you that are new authors, all of you that deal with being new and trying to figure out where to get started, when I met this young lady, I thought about the fact that, wow, she's young. She's a young author. And I don't mean young as in, she's got one book or she's only got two books. I mean a young lady. She's a younger author. And a lot of times we think of the younger authors as being, hit and miss, or they're into a whole different style of writing. What really got me was she had poetry books. She had a children's book. She had a book that was coming up, So I was like, wow. She's doing things a little different than the younger author. A lot of times they do a lot of one, class of writing, genres of writing. And I just thought that was very impressive. We met at an event that was held here in Fayetteville. And I just thought to myself, you know what? We need to introduce some younger authors so that people can see that, you're never too young, because we also had a show where we had the children authors that we were talking about. So you're never too young to write, but I really, really, really wanted to get into her writing because it was quite different. Her topic was quite different. What she was writing about was quite different. So it kind of made me stumble through the grass and say, let me go over here and talk to this girl and see what she got over here. So I really, really, really appreciated the fact that she was a solid writer. Got a solid start in writing. So I want to bring to the stage Mahogany Clark.
Yay!
Hi.
Good evening. How are you, my dear?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Listen, we want to know all about you. We want to know what you do, when you do it, why you do it, and of course your little tagline of Mahogany Rights. We want to know all about that. So tell us. This is something that we ask everybody. So don't get, like, wow, why they asking me that? We ask everybody the same thing every time they come on the show. We can't introduce you any better than you introduce yourself.
Right.
So who is Mahogany Clark?
Yes. Well, hi guys. I'm Mahogany Clark, and I'm 25 years old currently. My birthday is actually next month, July 24th, which is
Mhm.
when I'm going to release my newest book, which is my sixth self-published book. I'm actually from Miami, Florida. I got stationed here in Fort Bragg, and I just ended up staying here after I got out after 5 years because I like it here. Honestly, I've never been fast-paced like so always outside or something like that, so I don't really need an environment that's like that. Plus the cost of living here was a lot cheaper than Florida, so
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
She's
And then I
married almost beyond her years already.
Yeah,
right.
she got more wisdom than most of them already, right?
And
Okay.
my roots were here pretty much because I got used to living here. I met people here that became like family to me, and I mean, North Carolina just became home. So, and then plus, the LLC was cheaper to have, or like the insurance is cheaper. I pay attention to stuff like that. So I was
Yeah,
like, why would I
very
want
good.
to leave? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it
I
makes
am a
sense.
veteran as well, as an author, and currently, I am in school right now, actually working on my bachelor's. I'm thinking of just going straight for the master's because I already have my associates, so I was trying to go ahead and shoot
Finish
for the
finish
stars.
off everything
Yeah,
else. Okay, okay. So
Well,
now
thank
let me
you
let
for
me
your service before we go on. Thank you for your
yeah, thank you for service. But
service.
but let's
Appreciate
talk
that.
about that route that you chose. Let's
Mhm.
let's just talk about that for a minute. Um and you can let me know when I'm off course because I'm just following along the path that you've laid. You say that you went in the military, you did your years, and then you got out. You did your 5 years, and then you said, well, you know what, let me do this. But in that 5 years, have you always been interested in writing?
Oh, yes. I actually wrote my first book in the military at 19. I had been in about a year or so. It took a while because I went through training and then I went through AIT and then I
Hmm.
finally got stationed. Yeah. So it was like maybe 6 months after I got stationed is
Hmm.
when I wrote, yeah, my first book.
Okay, okay.
Mhm.
So writing has always been in the I always say in the headspace. It's
Mhm.
always, it's always knocking at the door saying, you need to write this. You need to write this. You need to put this down. You need to put that down.
So yeah,
So,
but how did what brought about that first book? What?
Yeah.
and that was the next question. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
Yep, that's what I was going to say. So, what made that first book become the knock that you said, you know what? Tired of you knocking. I'm
mhm,
going to open this door and go ahead and write that book.
Well, I was pretty much purpose searching, trying to figure out what else, what was the reason necessarily that I was here. I know I was in the military. I'm not saying I'm not trying to, disclude that or something, but, I was trying to look for something within myself that I could, that could just basically navigate me in the best way in life and also help others along the way as well. So that's when my first book came about because I thought back to my childhood of when I couldn't really speak about certain things or do certain things. You growing up and you're the kid, you don't really have much of a voice like that. So I would write things down and then I kind of ball it up and throw it away. So nobody would find it or something like that. But when I felt some type of way and I couldn't really express it, I would just write it and then ball up and throw it away. I never thought nothing of it. I never was like, oh, I would be a writer one day or something. But I just happened to think back to it. And then I did do a lot of like writing and then I would write quotes and then I'll post them. So I did a lot of that. So that's when I figured out like I did have a passion for it. And it was something that was healing to me, honestly. So it was something that I just decided to do.
mhm.
Okay,
Right.
so now you said something. You started out at 19, and I want the audience to understand this. A lot of times we think about the youth and we say they're too young to even put a stamp on anything. They're
Mhm.
too young to really say that they want to put a, that they got it down pat.
Mm.
And here we have a young woman who said she was searching at 19
Mm.
for her purpose.
Yeah.
If you guys don't have, if or you have youth at home in your house that are not thinking that they have to have a purpose before they do anything else,
Mm.
the platform has to be purpose.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know which way you're going to go. And that's what she said. She said she didn't know which way she was going to go,
Mm-hmm.
but she knew that there had to be a purpose.
Yeah. Mahogany, you're wiser than some 60-year-olds.
Yes, yes, because there's a lot of people that don't understand that foundation of purpose holds you.
Yeah.
So I want to commend you on that first and
Thank you.
foremost,
Yes, thank
because
you.
that foundation, if you even if you build on yourself without that purpose, platform or that foundation, you find yourself leaning this way and leaning that way and going with your friends and going with, what you see others do and, bending and twisting and everything else because your purpose is not firmly set.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I want to commend you on that alone, knowing that you had to have a purpose. So you started your company, Mahogany Rights. Now you started that, you said after you got out of military, or you started it while you were in the military?
Oh yes, while I was in, because I had a name, so it was another Instagram that I had, Mahogany Writings. This is before I joined the military, and I would use it basically, like I said, to write like different quotes, and I would post them. So I had already had Mahogany Writings, but I was basically, starting over pretty much and actually solidifying the purpose of, the writing and everything and pursuing it full time. So I came up with Mahogany Rights to
Mhm.
replace that name. But I mean, I still have my other page as well, but that's where Mahogany Rights came in at.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
let me ask you quickly about your mindset. You were in Miami, born and raised, right?
Yeah.
And then what was the mindset of going into the military, and what did you expect from there, or what were your thought processes, even though it evolved into the writing aspect?
Yes. So when I was in high school, that was so funny too. I actually told myself I was never going to join the military. I remember when I was younger and that commercial would come on, that little army commercial would come on, and my grandmother would sit behind me, and it came on, and she was like, "That's going to be you," and I was like, "Nope." like, like what? No, ain't no way. So and then I was in my senior year. And was next is pretty much college. I did get like some college offers and stuff like that. But I mean, I was like, okay, maybe I'm gonna do college. But then I was in class one day and over the intercom they called my name to come down. So I came down and there was a recruiter there waiting on me. And I didn't, I forgot we had took the ASVAB because we take
Oh,
the ASVAB, yeah, just in case you want to join the military. They make you, well, not make you, but they have us take it, just in case. And I
yeah,
forgot I took it. So I was like, why was he even like, why am I even, on his radar?
yeah,
And yeah, we had the conversation. I told him I wasn't really interested in the military necessarily, but he told me to, use it as a stepping stone. And he said, you don't have to do 20 years, So I always knew I was never doing 20 years, I'm gonna be honest.
sure.
I was one of those people that knew it was never gonna be 20 years, but I did, do fulfill the purpose that I went in for with that.
Mhm.
So yeah.
So from
That's
from
great.
military to writer, and now you're doing your writing and everything. What is it that you're doing, or do you have any intention on doing anything that would supplement your time and your space until Mahogany Rights becomes world renowned? What what are you doing
Yeah.
in what's the space and the elements that you have? What are some of the things that you enjoy doing? What are some of the things that you've taken on to
Mm.
do?
Yes. So what's funny is, I mean, even though I do have a passion for writing, I feel like I would do that regardless. I actually strayed away from writing before because I tried other different business ventures. Like I actually had a semi truck while I was in the military. I don't know why, but I went ahead and did that, and that was a headache. That was something I did not prepare myself for. But I ended up selling the truck anyway. But I've always kind of been in logistics because my MOS was logistics while I was in the military, and I tried something, with the trucking, and I had my CDL, and I tried stuff different avenues of logistics. And then even the degrees that I've been pursuing, they're logistics based. So in the meantime,
Yeah.
that's usually what, like, within that space of when I'm not writing, I was pursuing logistics, or actually, just self-care things like working out, making sure I eat healthy, learning how to, what helps my body, what doesn't help my body, learning my body, learning how to navigate my anxiety, my depression, things like that, things that would just help me be better, like, overall. That's normally what, or if not that, then I'm probably helping somebody do something, or I'm spending time with people I love and care for. That's usually what's in those spaces between it.
Yeah.
Well, that brings me to like what your books are about, because your saying or your tagline with your books has been one of saying, just letting us know that, hey, I'm into empowerment, I'm into self-love, I'm into peace, I'm into happiness, I'm filled with bringing others purpose to the point. So that was, like I said in the beginning, that was one of the things that drew me to your area when I saw the self-help and you self-love, and I said, this baby ain't old enough to get nobody self-love and self-help. She's sweet as could be. You could tell by the way she was smiling and just being all happy and everything. I said, little sweetheart, look at her. She here selling her book and everything. Just a beautiful, beautiful presentation. Her area was just beautiful. But in listening to her and opening up her book and just cracking it open, I saw something that I had not seen in youth. And I don't mean it to be you're a kid. I just mean it to be you're a younger author, that you're young. So self-love, peace, happiness, and purpose. Self-love, peace, happiness, and purpose. None of that equates to a lot of the things that we see youth present.
Yeah.
Even in their so-called rap music,
Right.
in their so-called, the videos, the monetization that they do on social media, none of it tags this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So what made you aim towards what you aim towards? And I understand you're solid. I understand. But what made you, like, veer away from the common things that get, instant gratification, to go into a lane where you might have a little bit of, baby, you don't really know what you're doing. Baby, you don't know what you're saying. You might get a little bit of that because there's not a lot of people that are your age that are ready for self-love, peace, happiness, and purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true. Yes. Well, of course, what made me go through that path, I mean, it was pretty much painful things. If I had to say, majority of my writings are from painful moments. The only book that probably was not, well, the only two books that were not like that was my children's book and the most recent one that's coming up. But all my other ones, it stem from a place of pain for the most part, of dealing with people and not really knowing how to love myself, not knowing how to navigate myself, not knowing how to control my emotions, not knowing how to set boundaries, not knowing how to stick to them, stop, not like all the people pleasing and worried about what people think about me, and, just trying to keep somebody in my life that doesn't want to stay, the relationships that did not work out, just everything, childhood trauma. I had a lot of reasons to veer off into something different that just wasn't the same. And it wasn't going to take me off into a path of, bitterness, no growth. And one day I'm blinking and I'm 45 and I'm still talking about, like what happened 15 years
Right.
ago. You know what I
That's
mean?
right.
Like,
That's right. That's you are
so,
absolutely right.
Right, you're so right. Oh my goodness. Well, and I had that question too, Nanette. Mahogany being, your age, and I don't want to harp about it is young, but literally, I
It
have
is
a
young.
grandchild that's about to turn 21. So, so it is young to me. Yeah, and so, and again, most people your age are not seeking self love, peace, happiness, and all of the things. They are seeking the world things, the world's definition of happiness. They're not seeking peace. I know that for sure. This chaotic world that we live
right,
in, the internet and all of that, and there's no peace in the internet.
right,
There's no peace. So, in and and peer pressure and or community pressure is a big thing. It's just a huge thing. So I am just like, what do you attribute? You said things that you go through, but there's got to be something in you that you identify with that 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 you're like the phoenix that rises above all of those to understand that there is such thing as self love
right.
first, and there is such thing as peace. And yes, that means different things to different people. And I'm gonna ask you about that later. And
Mhm.
then what is true happiness? Because again, there's some definite definitions of those things. And you already touched on the purpose. So what do you feel that was in you that allowed you to get to that place?
I feel like it's always kind of been there. When you're growing up in school and they ask you what you want to be when you grow up, I actually answered one day and I was saying I want to be happy,
Mhm.
because I was so used to being
Yeah.
unhappy or always stuck in a, cycle of like
Mhm.
chaos, or stuck in a mental cycle as well of just
Mhm.
always worrying and all of that stuff. So that's what it was very hard. I mean, I'm not gonna say it was easy to just break that need or that unconscious need for something that's just not stable, or something that's not smooth, or something I feel like I have to earn, or
Mhm.
something that, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't feel good if it's like, okay, it's just given. You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
it was like, I feel like it was always there. It just took different um
Yeah.
experiences in my life to happen for me to get back to it.
Yeah.
Basically.
And I'm gonna have to agree with you there because me at a person that's plus 60, I just came to the realization that I've lived my life with that hurt. I've lived the hurt life. Not that I haven't accomplished things and done things, but I've really come to the realization that that's how I was living my life. And so I applaud you. I'm like in awe. I celebrate the fact that you, at a very young age, got to that place instead of living a whole life to get to that place.
And
Right.
not only that, you're a symbol for others if they pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole thing. That a lot of times, again, the young pre-adulting. That's what I told my grandchildren. That you're pre-adulting. You're in your 20s. You haven't reached it yet because you haven't reached total security.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You haven't reached that total level of security. But you, on the other hand, by you going into the military and then coming out of the military, a lot of your maturity came from the direction of the military.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not so much your maturity as far as what you wanted to do or who you wanted to be or how you wanted to be, but it was more or less being able to adapt, being able to just understand that today is a day of no's.
Right.
If they tell me no, okay, I'm good. Today
Mm-hmm.
is the day of no's. If
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow they tell me yes, okay, today's the day of yes. You've learned to adapt
Mm-hmm.
to others' decisions. Whereas a lot of the youth today are fighting adapting.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
They're fighting someone that's telling them no, you can't do this. They want to argue with adapting. They want to argue with what may make them stronger,
Mm-hmm.
what may, because they learn to adapt. Has
Mm-hmm.
Right.
nothing to do with personal feelings. It's
Right.
just that you're living in a world where it ain't about you.
Right.
You know, you're living in a world where
Tell me what
everything ain't going your way. You know, you're not with
Right.
your mom and your dad anymore who are going to say, just wait a minute, baby, I'll get it for you. No, you're in a world now where you either get it for yourself, and you may very well walk up against somebody that says, no, you can't have it. You know, no, it's not yours.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked this next question with that in mind, the adaptation in mind. When you write your books, and I'm quite sure you've identified with the audience that looks at it and says, yeah, that's what I need, or read some of your poetry and said, yeah, that hit home.
Right.
How many in your age group have asked you why are you writing this?
I've had maybe a couple people that know me personally, or actually some people that may want to write their own book too. But I've also had I felt like I had a balance of actually an older crowd and the younger crowd. Believe it or
Okay.
not, yeah. So
Okay.
I've had the good balance of both, which is good. I feel like because I feel like I can relate to.
Now, do you do open mics with your poetry as well?
I have in the past, but I have not lately. No.
Not lately. Okay. So a lot of your poetry, you like me, a lot of the poetry that you write, you just write the poetry and let them go ahead and read the poetry as opposed to you presenting the poetry. It's
Right.
more in written form. Okay. Okay.
So how do you feel, writing, especially your first book? What are the things that you had to navigate to get that to a published state? Because on this show we talk a lot with the authors that come on about the process, the whole process of doing it, and especially doing it correctly. Because in this world now we have do it yourself everything, right? And when you do it yourself, you really don't, understand the rules in the true process of making it happen. So what are some of your experiences that you could share in writing your first book and getting it to the published stage?
Yes. So, well, I would say, so I was really excited. I mean, I'm really excited about all my books that I released but I will say sometimes being too excited can cause you to kind of miss certain things. Like, I've had, with my first book, I've had like some grammar issues and I had to have that fixed, later on. And, you hear that somebody reading your writing and they tell you like, oh, this was spelled wrong or this sentence didn't really make sense to me. It kind of hits you in the chest. You're like, oh, you're like, because you're not thinking,
Right.
like that was what was going to come up. So
Mhm.
it was a lot of that. And then with my first book too, when I've had help publishing that one, as far as like the cover and uploading it to, Amazon or Ingram and things like that. I've learned that with my first book and the people that helped me bring it to publishing. And, the process, like I was saying, it's just good to take your time. And then if you can, honestly, a lot of the information that we want to know or how we want to do different things, it actually is out there. I mean, it is still different hearing it from somebody personally, though, because, oh, they went through that personally. So I know that this is real. This is not just somebody on a screen talking or
Mhm.
something like that, but it still is really out there, especially on YouTube. YouTube is like a university. Um, so it just taught me a lot of stuff to figure out that I could have figured out on my own some years ago, but didn't really. I just wanted some help because, when it's your first time putting together projects, you don't want to mess it up or, you don't want to you're so
Right.
excited. You want to, get it out there. So,
Right. That's one of
And
my
not,
favorite things to
and
say
not
on
only that, it's the thing of experience being the best teacher. So a lot
Mhm.
of times, even though you can get it from the YouTube videos and you can get it from the tutorials or the hey step-by-step instruction, you still want to know some of the pitfalls that you get from people that have done it.
Right.
You still need to know some of the things that can happen, have happened, even if everything seems to be working well.
Right.
You want to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and the period is at the end of the sentence, and it's in your name and not
Right.
in their name, and you want to make sure that all of that stuff is done. So it's good to know both ends, both ways. It's good to know that you can go back. It's like almost knowing how to make a cake, and different people make cakes different way. And you look at it and say, well, I know how to make it this way. And they say, well, no, you know what? I added more of this and more of that, and it came out this way. And you're like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't know you could add that ingredient and still get the same type cake I have, but
Right.
a different flavor, So you want to make sure that you do all of that and doing your due diligence to self, Some of the questions that come up with younger authors is the monetization, this new thing that they have, the monetization on Facebook and everywhere else. I'm a firm believer in getting everything out there, but they change so quickly as to how you put it out. How, okay, today you do a podcast, tomorrow you do this, next day you do this. And oh yeah, by the way, you want to put 5 or 6 posts every day, and you want to make sure that you're sending it to all your emails and your contacts. And oh yeah, to get new contacts, you want to make sure that you make it public. And then you want to make sure this and you want to make sure that. Yeah. My question is, what have you found to be a better way as a new person with a new book coming out? Every time you have a new book, you go back through the cycle again. Every time every time you start with a new book, the last time you promoted your last book is a whole different way than you promote your next book.
Right.
So what have you found to be something that had to carry over that worked well in each of your processes, in each book that you've done so far? What have you found to be a dead-on must do?
I feel like a dead-on must do is basically getting out there in the community, and being more in person, with what you're doing. I feel like that was always consistent, and that was always more personable. And I mean, honestly, it made the process beautiful. Like it was the beautiful part of the whole entire process. It made it worth it. It makes everything, for me, it made everything, just better. Like I could think back on those moments, or I can look at those old pictures, and I can look at, I can see where I've come from. I can see how far everything has come. So I would say definitely the in person. I know it's different from like me saying on the internet. I would say the internet, but for me, the in person has been.
Well, you know what? And I'm 100% with you. I'm 100% with you. I would much rather, and I moved from New Jersey to Fayetteville. I loved the in-person contact, and though meeting the people that were reading and meeting the people that wanted to engage and talking to the people about the process and what was next and why I wrote this or why I wrote that. Whereas a lot of times on your internet connections or your social media connections, you get the thumbs up, you get the heart, you get the well done, congratulations. You get the, oh, you were there. You get all of the responses.
Right.
You don't get some of those committed conversations that you get.
Right. Not all the time.
Right. You don't always get that. So having that type of relationship and coming from that type of relationship where it was consistent for me, because I was in an area where it was, overpopulated with authors, overpopulated with people that were readers, overpopulated with people that wanted to know what was new. I think that you're dead on with that the community connection is necessary no matter what you're doing or how you're doing. And then you talking self-love, talking peace, talking, happiness, talking purpose. When you talk to people on a one-on-one and you share that puts you on a whole different platform than most authors.
Right.
It puts you on a whole different thing, because now they know you for being personable, and I mean, when you go to certain places and you look for a book, you don't always get to meet the author. But if you go to meet the author, you feel more connected with the story and the understanding. So I agree with you. Being, being out in public is one of the better things. What about knowing self and worth and everything? What's the message in your writings?
Yes. So the message in my writings is, I'm not saying to, people can probably misunderstand me and feel like I'm saying that, you don't need to have relationships with other people or something like that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it is better for you to have a better relationship with yourself, or the best relationship with yourself, so that you can actually have better relationships with other people. It
Yeah.
just makes you better overall. It makes you a better parent,
Mhm.
a better spouse. It makes you a better family member, a better friend. It
Mhm.
makes you better for you. You're actually happier. People can see it. People can feel it. You can feel it.
Yeah.
It's not like when you have to wake up, you have to affirm yourself, each and every day, and you don't feel it. You know what I mean? Until you do,
Mhm.
you're faking it till you make it, but you don't really feel it. It's different when you actually get to that place and you feel it. Like you're like, wow, this is
Mhm.
different. Like, because a lot of stuff that you were worried about or you thought mattered, it falls off. And it's like a heavy weight just lifted off your shoulder. Like that imaginary weight
Mhm.
that we all put on ourselves is it's like freedom, pretty much.
That's
Mhm.
awesome. That's
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that your birthday is July 24th. And
Yeah.
my granddaughter's is July 23rd. So yeah, y'all. That stuck with me. And you mentioned that you have an upcoming book coming out on that day when you're launching the book. Is that right?
Yes.
So can you share a little bit about what the new book is? That you said that it's a departure from the self love type or the children's story. So what are you doing now?
Well, I mean, I actually think it does still fall. It still kind of falls into self love, but it's not quite the same title. It's actually about being in solitude. I basically explain the different, like the actual process or the ways that you can actually get to a good place of actually being, enjoying your own presence and able to be alone and not feeling like you need to go outside of yourself and fixing all the things that I spoke about as far as people pleasing and the boundary, the lack of boundaries, the lack of knowing yourself, the lack of your emotion, control of your emotion, and everything that comes with just you as a person. It's supposed to show you that just because you're alone, or maybe you spent a lot of your time alone, maybe you don't have a lot of friends, it doesn't mean that something is wrong with you. It just means that you're just in solitude. And honestly, being alone can bring a lot of help for you. It can bring a lot to you, overall. So that's
Yeah.
what, yeah.
Wow.
And then what's the name of the book that's coming up?
Oh, yes, it's The Power of Solitude, Alone, Not Lonely by Mahogany Clark.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay. The
I love
power
it.
of solitude. Okay. So when you say the power of solitude, and then you couple that with alone but not lonely,
Right.
how does one, and I'm only saying this because I was an only child. Okay. So I don't have, and I'm so glad now that I'm, older, I'm really, really, really glad that I didn't have the drama.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to be negative. I'm just saying,
Right.
now that I'm older, I've seen people my age and a little younger that are now in their adulthood, or they're losing their parents, and now
Mhm.
they got to take on certain responsibility, or they're raising their grandchildren and they got to take on certain responsibility, because not only are they raising their grandchildren, now they got a niece and a nephew that they got to look out for.
Mhm.
I'm one that's saying I would have welcomed it,
Right.
but I understand now how I
Mm.
wouldn't welcome it. I can
Right.
almost understand both sides of the spectrum.
Right.
Like,
Mhm.
it's a lot of responsibility to be the older sibling. It's a lot of responsibility to be the younger sibling. It's a
Mhm.
lot of responsibility to be caught in the middle of the dictatorship of the older, and the whining of the younger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you say the power of solitude,
Mhm.
as an adult, and I'm asking you this, and I know that you're a baby in the bunch, but I understand that. I understand that you're a baby in the bunch. But when you say the power of solitude, are we tapping into those that can't find solitude?
Mm.
Yes. I also explained that too. Because I know it's not always easy, especially if you have responsibilities or you have family. You would
Mm-hmm.
actually have to work harder to make
Mm-hmm.
that time for yourself. So I do talk about that in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But because I do think it's important, and I always thought to myself, I'm in that same position as far as where it's just me, having to worry about me. I do have siblings and things like that,
Mhm.
and I have helped people or taken care of people before in the past and things like that. But it is just me technically because I don't have family or I don't have children. But I always thought to myself, if I did or if that came about, I've always thought like of how ways that I would be able to implement, basically still, being able to be with myself or being able to and wanting a partner, especially if I had that type of relationship, to wanting them to also want the same thing for themselves. Because I feel like when you are at your best, everything around you is at its best. Because if you're the head, and everything is wrong with
Right.
you,
Right.
it trickles down into, you know what I mean? So it's important regardless. If you do have those responsibilities, you just, you have to still put yourself first at some point,
So,
so that way
so
you
what
keep
you're
going.
saying, is the main thing in it all, and that's how you've grown to be who you are through it all, is you make sure that you find that time for you to release.
Right,
You make sure that you find that time for you to have that, regardless to what your relationships are,
right.
regardless to what relationship you're in, regardless to what status you hold, regardless to whatever it is. And if you do that,
Yeah.
you should find yourself in a better place mentally
Mhm.
and physically, because of the simple fact that your body is not taking on the toll of everything all the time.
Right.
Um, I understand. I understand. And I understand that in the title that you have there, the power of solitude, alone but not lonely.
Mhm.
The thing about it is that you don't want to be where you just seclude yourself totally
Right.
and don't reconnect,
Right.
because that's what a lot of people have done. What they do
Mhm.
is they walk away from the problem
Mhm.
and they don't reconnect to any of the reality or
Yeah.
anyone that's connected to the problem. So it might be, maybe you're having a problem with your brother and you go to visit your mom and your mom says, well, your brother's going to be here. And you be like, I ain't coming over there when he over there. I'm not dealing with life with him. Not
Right.
realizing that that's not a natural thing, because it turns you on the inside, even though you don't think it does.
Right.
It
And
wears on you on the inside.
I would think that knowing your purpose would be really helpful in
Mm-hmm.
understanding the power of the solitude, because you know I'm perfectly fine with my own company, really. And I can spend days in my apartment, not to cut myself off from the world, but just I'm okay with it. I don't. Yeah, I think you said this in the beginning when your decision to move to North Carolina is because you didn't need the fast paced world of Miami and all of that that inherently is there. Um, um, but then when you're the purpose, you're serving your purpose and knowing it, you do have to connect with yourself.
Right.
Um, you've got to be really connected with yourself in order to be purposeful, um, as you're designed to be. Well, I mean, I hear that you're agreeing with that. But in your book, um, how do you identify the lonely versus the alone?
Yeah. Yes. I actually defined the difference between, alone and lonely, in the book
Mm-hmm.
as well. So I let it be known that alone is something that's a choice. That's something that you actually are choosing, and you don't find it to be like a burden, or it's not something that's forced. Versus lonely is more like you're isolated and you're forced to be alone, but you really don't want to. You're still looking for something outside of yourself to fill you up, and
Mhm.
you're not, because you're not able to. So you're still, it's like you're still missing something. But alone is like there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing missing. You're just simply being, and that's pretty much it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And sometimes we identify that lonely, not so much the alone, but the
Right.
lonely. Sometimes we identify that with what other people want us to have.
Mm.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
Mm.
and
Yeah.
we feel that that's missing.
Yeah. I
And
talk
it's
about
not
that
really,
too.
yeah, it's
Mhm.
not something that we really need. It's
Yes.
not something that we really will gain from. It's not
Mhm.
something that we really want. It's something that someone else has suggested to us that would benefit us, when in reality, it may benefit the relationship we have with them,
Uh-huh.
but it
Right.
really doesn't relate to the relationship we have with self.
Right.
Exactly.
So we have to be careful of that. A lot of times I again, identify with that with people that I've worked with in the past, children and youth, where I've said, well, who gave you that nickname? Who gave
Mhm.
you that tag?
Yeah.
Who gave you that idea that this is who you are?
Right.
Right.
Who made you think that you needed this in
Mm-hmm.
order to be what you
Right.
want to be?
Yeah.
Who did that to you? And they try to live up to that tag
Mm-hmm.
because
Mhm.
they don't want to be lonely. They don't
Yeah.
want to be looked at as, oh, you resented the fact
Mm-hmm.
that I gave you this, or the fact that I called you this, or I gave you this idea. I used to ask the kids all the time, where'd you get your nickname from?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Who
Yeah.
gave you that nickname? Why they keep calling you that? And you're no longer Shorty. You're standing 6'2". Why are they calling you Shorty still? But
Right.
the thing about it is that we have to realize that sometimes we put people in situations where they do feel lonely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do feel like, you've separated me. You've made me feel a distance.
Mhm.
I need that closure in order for me to move on, when we really don't need the closure. We
Mm-hmm.
really
Right.
we really don't need it. So,
Yeah.
Right. Because it also betters too, like just
so
your relationship.
again, that's a powerful. Mhm,
Yeah. It,
mhm.
it just betters your
Because the thing
relationship.
is,
Oops, no, sorry. I think
yeah,
okay. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it does. It leans on not only who you are, but who your relationship is.
Right.
What is your relationship with them? How do you feel when you're with them? And you could be in the presence of 100 people and still feel alone.
Right.
Yeah.
You
Exactly.
know,
So
Oh yeah.
exactly. So you have to get to the root of that problem, and it also saves a lot of time with how people say, or how people will get hurt in a situation, but they will say it was unintentional. So it saves
Mm.
a lot of unintentional things happening too, because if you know yourself, because if you don't know yourself, then of course you can probably do things and have no idea that, this is how it's coming off, or this is what it is, or, you end
mhm.
up hurting somebody, but you just didn't really know yourself that well, or it also stops you from saying yes to something that you probably wouldn't even, you wouldn't even want to say yes to.
Mhm,
So it just
mhm.
saves a lot of time, a lot of confusion, and a lot
Or
of
shadowing again, and like in the more so in the younger generation than it is in the older generation. Although we have a bunch of followers in the older generation too, but a lot of times the younger generation finds themselves following the crowd, or
right,
following the group, or following what the trend is, or
right,
following whatever it is. I talk about it quite often, about the kids that just figure, I'll go on TikTok and become a sensation.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you get that idea from, sir? You're not gonna be on TikTok because you, first off, you can't sing and you can't dance. So why are you going on? But they just automatically figure, if I push it enough,
hmm
I'm going to be able to do whatever. But they haven't found themselves, and they're
Right.
looking for a crowd of approval,
Mm-hmm.
which would not give them the feeling of loneliness.
Right.
I'm not alone in this.
And it's a false way of finding your purpose, most of the time.
right,
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it should be the opposite, that when you go to those places, that you're living out your purpose. Like, I follow a number of people that cook, and so they've been purpose, and that's what they're doing. They're displaying their purpose instead of
Mm-hmm.
trying to find some kind of gratification, thinking that is the purpose, and so it's a faux purpose, and so they're
Right.
trying to do anything to get attention, which is why, remarkably, this
hmm
group, um, it seems to lead the charge in that. And I'm not saying that it's um, uh, uh, only your age group, because I'll tell you what, a lot.
No, it spreads the gambit. It
Yeah.
spreads and
Yeah.
unfortunately, it just seems so much more ridiculous for
Yeah.
people that are older
Mhm.
because you should know better.
Yeah.
You stepped on that thumbtack 1,000 times. You still stepping on that same thumbtack,
Yeah.
blaming somebody for dropping the package instead of you bending over, picking up the thumbtack and
Yeah.
moving it out of the way. You know, you just keep stepping on that same and going, ouch,
Mhm.
ouch.
Yeah.
You know, but you're not thinking about the fact that you don't have to have that support
Right.
from people that really are not supportive. They could care
Mhm.
less what you're
Yeah.
doing.
That's
Yeah.
because they haven't done that work. So that's what
Exactly.
the work. Yeah. The inner work that nobody really wants to do. That's really how that happens. You know, a lot of the time, these people just don't feel like it, or they get caught up with everyday life and they forget about themselves and they wonder why they're having that issue that they feel like they should have gotten rid of 20 years ago or something like that. But it's like, if you never work on something or you never see that if it's even an issue, then that can happen. So
Well, not only that, you just said something that really is profound. You said that the fact that number one, before anybody can bring you something that you can decipher what's good for you or what's bad for you, you have to know who you are.
right.
You know, before I could say no to becoming a truck driver, I got to understand that I can't drive a truck.
Right.
You know, and if I really want to drive that truck, I
Right.
need to go learn to drive the truck first.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people, it goes even deeper than that because they don't understand their past. They don't understand the past aggressions. They don't understand why they get snippy when certain things are said. They don't understand why they have a nasty attitude just when it's good morning. You
Right.
know, I call it madness. You know, I just simplify it real easy. Yeah, you're not crazy, but you got some madness going on because
Right.
if you're blaming everything on the outside for things that happen to you on the inside, you need to check inside.
Right.
You need to recheck all of that. There's no such thing as coffee making you feel better. You know, it's not that you need a cup of coffee in the morning before you can get started. No, you don't. No, you don't. You could be like me and just tell people, I don't start till after 10. You can talk to me before then,
Right.
but you're not going to
Yeah.
get the real person until after 10. So watch what you say so I can watch what I say. You know, you gotta know your limits. You gotta
Right.
know
Right.
what annoys you, what doesn't annoy you. You know, if you know that certain things annoy you, you make it known. Listen, this is the way that I feel. And
Yeah.
people will adjust to the personality that you introduce to them. So if
Right.
you put on this facade of who
Mhm.
you are, people are adjusted to this facade. When you come with the real you, and they be like, well, what's wrong with you?
Right.
What's wrong with her? Because they're looking at the facade that you've been giving them all of this
Yeah.
time. When
Yeah.
did you change to be that? When did
Right.
you not like this? When did you not like? And all along you haven't been liking it, but you've
Mhm.
been accepting it. You've been accepting the the negative. You've been
Right.
accepting the wrong side of the tracks. You've been you even in relationships, you've been accepting the fact that he won't do certain things or she won't do certain things. You've been
Right.
accepting those things. So now your friend or your significant other is now saying, well, where did that come from?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
You
don't know
know,
I don't know who you are. That
Yeah.
favorite line. Yeah.
right, right, right. So when you do that, you then become lonely
Mhm.
and you don't look into the I'm alone.
Right.
You don't look into who you are. You look into the fact that they did this.
Mhm.
And you can't always, like I used to tell people, you know, like when you point that one finger out, there's three fingers pointing back at you. You know, no matter what way you do it, when you point your finger, there's three looking back at you. You need to check those three before you start pointing.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, it's not always them. Sometimes you have opened up a door to
Mhm.
let people walk in on you, to let
Yeah.
people walk on your personality, walk
Right.
on who you are, walk on your purpose, change your direction when you want to do certain things. You've allowed that. And we have to understand that that's not something that we should do. But you had you had three quotes. One was alone is not the same as lonely. But you had one that said, sometimes you think when you are in the dark place that you've been buried, but actually you've been planted.
Yeah.
Now, if that doesn't sound like somebody that's over the age of 25, I don't, that does not
25.
yeah, that does not sound like a 25-year-old mind. That sounds like somebody that's been here. As a matter of fact, that sounds like somebody that might sit you down at their feet.
Right.
Say, listen, let me tell you this. So explain to us, what do you mean by buried? And then what do you mean by planted?
Yeah. So when I say buried, buried is it has that negative connotation to it. As far as like, somebody just throwing dirt on top of you and it just goes all black and you can't see, you almost can't even push your way out. But with planted, it's like, okay, so you're just being planted, but eventually you're going to rise above that dirt. You're going to come out and you're going to sprout and you're going to be something beautiful. You're going to be, something that grew between the cracks sometime or of concrete, or you're just going to be like a phoenix pretty much. You're going to rise above all. And so it's like, so just because you might be going through a dark time, or you might feel like you're at your lowest, or you might feel like, oh, this is so hard. And, I don't know why this is happening to me. It just might be happening for you. So that way you can get to where you need to go, or where, life needs you to be for other people and for yourself.
Yeah. Well, you don't know, but I hate that saying, you do know. A lot of people, when they make the statement, I'm going through something, they really don't pay attention to the words that they're saying. Is that I'm going through this dark place. Right. They're not like I'm stuck, but in their mind, I'm stuck in this dark place.
They're saying they're going through.
And they're going through. And words are power, right? We know that words are power. Yeah. So if they would just, we, all of us, them, they, us, and we, and would just realize what you're saying. I'm going through a dark place.
And not only that, realize the power in what you're saying.
Right.
The power is in the tongue, and usually that's from thought. That's from deep thought. That's from that tap on the shoulder that says, this is just a moment. I did, as a matter of fact, I deleted it by mistake. I've got to put it back up when we get off of here. But I did a post today about grace and mercy. The fact that, you get the grace from the fact that you know it's coming. Sometimes you got to go through the rut for you to learn the lesson.
Right.
But the grace is coming afterwards. That blessing is coming afterwards, because the lesson you now learned is a lesson of growth. It moves you, like you said, pushing through that little bit of light, because you were planted. Whatever hit you made you become planted. You got rooted.
Right.
You got rooted in the fact that you were involved in a situation that you couldn't get out of. You grew roots there. You grew something to hold on to. But now you got to grow up from it.
Right.
You got to sprout from it.
And then that comes back to that mindset thing too. And Mahogany, again, I'm just going to give you praises for knowing that first identifying your purpose and the self-love and the peace and the happiness. But the thing about rooted, and the thing that you said about, even through concrete, you can grow, that plant can grow up through there. And that's the thing with our rooting. No matter what the situation is, we're going to go through it. God has purposed us for something, whether we know it or not. But in the parable about the soil and the good seed, whether it's planted in good soil, but everything in those scenarios grows out of something. And the thing about it is that, if you grow up through the cement, your mindset might be to where my whole life is a struggle. So therefore, that plant that grows out of the cement could be that, you will only stay in cemented soil, if you will, if that's your mindset, right?
Right.
Or if in the good soil, I'm being planted for a purpose and a good purpose, and then you focus on the purpose then you are planting good seeds, because it flowers, it grows, it becomes that field that it's supposed to become, as opposed to that one shoot that comes out of the rocks, or or
Right,
gets or
right.
gets trampled on. Where in the other one, it's like, wherever it's planted in um, a shallow rocky place, so therefore the sun, it doesn't get strong, and so it will perish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
The things is, you really have to have that mindset of seeking the the self love, the peace, the happiness, and the purpose.
And building it.
I love that you said.
Yeah, yeah. Well, she also said
Mhm.
it's only too late when you no longer have the ability to live. If you never tried, you would never know. So, in this one, I want you to explain to me that one little part that says ability to live. Because we already know that if it's too late, you're gone. You're
Right.
gone. But realizing the ability to live, what is the ability to live part of that?
Yes, that part is for, well, really, I was pertaining to the age they So some people feel like because they reach a certain age that it's like, oh, I should have waited, and when honestly, if we really pay attention to life and you really actually get to know what life is about, a lot of people primary years or prime years especially are is when they're older. Like honestly, that's when you're more grounded, you're more solid. You might know
Yeah.
exactly what you want to do now. You're not all over the
Mhm.
place. You're on a path. And even then, sometimes if you're not, it's like sometimes people just sprout later in life. Like somebody could be 40 years of going through 40 years of life of just being comfortable, just being regular, and then all of a
Mhm.
sudden they're a millionaire because they did come up with this idea, you know what I mean, that sticks and the
Mhm.
world loves it
Mhm.
and the world sees you, you know what I mean? And it's like you spent,
Mhm.
40 years of your life not being seen or nobody's really talking about you as much or anything like that. And then all of a sudden all that can change. So that's why I said, like, really, it's just when you're no longer on this earth, that's when it's too late. That's when it's like, oh, okay, it's like, all right, there's not much else you can do about it. But while you're still living and while you're still here, if you
Mhm.
can make it happen, then you
Mhm.
should try whatever is in your mind that you want to be, which you want to, bring to fruition. You should definitely
Yeah.
give it a try.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I understand that, making a step in the right direction. Now, what message would you give the youth that are saying, I have no choice but not to make it? And I say that because I talk to youth all the time. I wish I had you tagging along. I had you as my partner. Let me bring
I
somebody
mean,
in
I can do that.
that's younger than me.
Love
Come on,
it.
Mahogany. We got to go talk to these crazy
Yeah.
kids because of the simple fact that for some reason they all of the fanfare and
Mhm.
glory of being the town gangster, or the
Right.
person that got through the beef, or the
Mhm.
person that's out on the run because they beefing or whatever.
Right.
What do you say to these young adults, young, and some of them are kids,
Mhm.
younger kids? I think the youngest that I spoke to last week was 13,
Mhm.
and their ideology just threw me for a loop because they
Mhm.
were, well, you old enough where you don't have problems.
Mhm.
Now, I didn't want to sit them down and open up my book of problems and
Right.
tell them, well, let's start here,
Yeah.
and go through a whole list, that reconnected to my youth that I'm still trying to clean up. I didn't want to do that,
Mhm.
but I did touch on the fact of change,
Right.
mental change, as well as them understanding that you have to understand that wherever you are, you can't be. So that
Right.
means you can't go hang out where everybody else is hanging out if you already know that it's negative there.
Mhm.
You can't do, the social media conversation if you know that the group is a negative group. You gotta
Right.
you gotta change it. So what do you say to the youth that may not read your book? They may not hear your voice. And of course, they're not listening to someone that's as old as I am or as old as Felice is. They're not even thinking about, because we're the symbol of their parents.
Yeah. Right.
We're the symbol of their grandparents. We're the symbol of their auntie. We're the symbol of people that are just saying, just do it.
Mhm.
You know, we're no longer the symbol of someone that will sit down and talk to them because they don't believe we know how to talk
Right.
and understand what they're saying. So
Yeah.
what do you say? What do you say to them?
Yeah, this is a perfect example. You know, I what I usually say is basically, you know, I've had every excuse, you know, not to be who I am. Like I have many excuses not to be. More than an excuse to be. So it's like
Mhm.
I just give that real reality, that real raw reality of it's like eventually, you know, you're not gonna be able to blame, you know, anybody else. You're not gonna be able to use that, you know, oh, this happened to me, and you're not gonna be able to lean on that anymore, you know, because one day you're going to be you're gonna be older. You're gonna be somebody different than who you were
Mhm.
then, you know, and that's what people are gonna see. People are not gonna see you for what you went through. Nobody even sees me for what I went through. So it's like,
Mhm.
you know, people may assume I haven't gone through anything just off the look. So that's why
Right,
I say
right.
like I've had plenty of excuses not to. So it's just like it's really up to you, you know, and it's unfortunate that of course you went through what you went through, but it's like, okay, so are you gonna stop there? Are you gonna let that be define who you are? You're gonna let that be it? You know, is that all, you know, you're gonna that's it for you, or are you gonna just keep going while you have the opportunity to change, you know, exactly what has happened or what is happening and create a new story, you know, for you.
Mhm. Right, right, right.
Yeah,
Create a new story. I like that.
so
Create a
true.
new story. Yeah.
Mhm,
Give it a new reason. Give it
mhm,
Right.
give it a new cushion to grow,
mhm.
new soil to grow in. Yeah.
Yeah,
Create a new. Create a new. I firmly believe that that is what is needed, and I don't know how to ignite a spark in it, but we'll definitely be talking. We'll
Mhm.
definitely be talking about it because I'm a firm believer that the youth carry the weight of the world on their shoulder. We always say that we carry the weight of the world on our shoulder, but half of our weight has already been done.
yeah,
Mhm.
We've already done it. They have the full weight because everything that's going on today is going to be there tomorrow.
Right.
You know, so they have the full weight of what's going on. We're
Yeah.
going into the point of, hey, been there, done that, ain't
Right.
gonna do it again. You know, we
Yeah.
don't think about
And
it that
then
way.
a lot of young people now are actually, you know, successful at young ages now. So I feel like it's a lot more pressure, you know. So they expect you to have, you know, like thousands of dollars at 15 years old, you know, and it's not
Right.
realistic. Like, yeah.
Right.
And so
And,
now the
and and
pressures
you know
are
what?
way
That's
worse.
funny. Funny that you
Yeah.
say that. They want to have the big money, but when you ask them what do they want to buy, they want to buy small things.
Right.
mm,
They're not looking at having big money to start a business
Right.
or having big
Longevity.
money to do
Yeah.
yeah,
anything big. They're
yeah,
looking at I want big money so I can get a pair of sneakers.
Right. So
right,
I can show
right.
up and show out. You know what I mean?
You know,
Right.
they're not even looking at a big car. You know, they're
Mhm,
not even looking at that. Whereas when I was younger, it was always we wanted another car. We wanted
Right.
to get the top line car, you know, in
mhm,
high school. Yeah, you driving to school? Yeah, nah,
Mhm.
because I got to bring my dad's car. I'm waiting to get my car. You
Yeah.
know, you want to
Like
drive his father's car to the school. But the
the
thing is
pressure's much
now, when you
more.
ask them, well, if you had the money,
mhm,
what would you do with it? A lot of them are talking about clothes. They're
yeah,
talking about how they're going to look. They're not.
Designer,
Yeah,
yeah, this
they're
stupid
not
stuff.
talking
Like,
yeah. It's the purpose of what unknowingly the money that they want is to make other people rich, which
yep,
is again not the purpose of you have knowledge.
yeah,
and not only that, making someone else validate who they are.
yeah.
Right.
I think missing the plot just
Yeah.
completely.
You know,
Like, you have
Yeah.
no idea how small you're thinking right now, and it's like them people probably not gonna even make it. So when you see
Right.
them after high school, all the people you're so worried about, like you so worried about
exactly.
what they thought of
Exactly.
you that day, and
Mm-hmm.
they probably not hadn't made nothing of themselves. So
Mm-mm.
it just says a whole.
Or when you even say to them, do you realize the CEO of one of the biggest companies wears deck shoes every day unless he's in a business meeting?
Right. Right.
You,
Right.
you
Right.
wouldn't
Yeah.
even you wouldn't even know who he
Right.
was until you came to the meeting. You'd be like, wow, that was the guy that was sitting on the deck, you know, with
Mm-hmm.
sneakers on.
Yeah.
He's not coming in the top,
Mm-hmm.
you know. He's shopping at Target and Walmart like everybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not getting designer clothes just to look like he's in design. Now you
Right.
That's
go
not what his money is for.
that's not what his money is for.
Wait
The
for him.
poor man's mindset, anyways. To be honest.
Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. Well, we want to thank you for being here with us. We've extended our time as usual,
Yeah.
but that's a usual thing we do.
That's
But
because
we
it's
want
good.
Yeah, that means it's good. We
Uh-huh.
want to make sure that we let our audience know how to get in touch with you. And I just put up a couple of your social media sites. She's on Instagram, and you can contact her on Instagram. She's also on TikTok, so you can contact her on TikTok. She's also got a YouTube channel, so you can contact her on YouTube. And of course, she's on the infamous Facebook. So you want to make sure that you get in touch with her because of the simple fact that when we look at some of the things that go on and how things go on, we want to make sure that people such as Ms. Mahogany Clark is contacted because this is a streamline into the youth. This is a streamline into making those connections. A lot of times we don't know what our kids want to do, but if your kid has a idea and they have an idea that they want to work with someone that's younger, they may not want to work with me. They may want to work with someone that's like younger age. This is the perfect opportunity to contact her. Let her know. You never know the connection that may overturn the thought process and serve the purpose. The door is open for you to make that contact. So Mahogany, Felice always has a last question for our guests. I open with an open question and she closes with a closing question. So Felice, why don't you ask Mahogany?
Well, first of all, let me tell you how inspired I am by you. And the older folks need to reach out to Mahogany Clark as well.
Yeah.
Kind of,
No,
sort of.
I appreciate your spirit so much. And so my question always is, especially with our guests that have so much going on, have found their purpose and are fully living out your purpose. And we celebrate that as well. And what do you do to fill your cup? Because in the serving of your purpose, you are giving all of this and living the way in which you should. But what do you do to fill it up and then get to overflow?
Yes. So what I do is, it happened over time, of course, because like I said, I started with the self love when I didn't even know exactly what it meant, and
Right.
it just over time it all started to make sense, and it all started to because you would think like I am loving myself, I'm getting my hair done, getting my nails done, I'm getting my feet done, I make sure I look good, like what do you mean, like you know what I mean? I'm going to the gym. So it made me realize that self love is a whole lot, or filling your own cup is a whole lot more than that. And, it actually is a lot more about, especially what's on the inside. So the inside has to match the outside. If you look
Yeah.
glamorous, you look like gold, you glittering on the outside, you need to glitter the same on the inside because
Yeah.
your inside means so much. That's why it's a lot of, the not to be a downer, but the suicide rates. And you'll see somebody that seems so beautiful, they seem so put together and they seem so handsome, and you'd be like, why would they want to take their own life? Or, it's because
Mhm.
the inside was not right.
Right.
It didn't matter what they
Right.
looked like on the outside. It was
Yeah.
all about the inside. Or somebody who's rich and
Yeah.
they're thinking of they're depressed, and people are like, how can you
Mhm.
be depressed when you got everything, or you got, you know what I mean? Because it
Yeah.
makes you
Right.
realize like that material stuff doesn't last, and that means nothing. That's the easiest thing to get in life because it's material based. The
Right.
best things in life are free, and
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure that's a saying everybody knows by
Yeah.
now, and it's true. It's honestly very true. Even people that feel like they don't care about it, you will care about that at some point in your life. You will realize like the best thing in life are free. Like that's the thing that brings you the most joy, the
Yeah.
free things of
Yeah.
life,
Mhm.
and the peace
Mhm.
and the happiness and the stuff
Mhm.
that's intangible is what really fills you up the most.
Yeah.
So that's how I, fill my own cup. I just realized that, and I live that, and I pursue that, and I, even if I may fall off that track, I get myself back on it. So
Mhm.
Very good.
yeah,
Very good.
Very good. Well, we appreciate
Love
all
it.
you have said, all you have shared. We appreciate your book, self-love. We appreciate all of the things that you've done because of the simple fact that we all need, you can't love yourself too much. There,
Yeah.
right.
there's no way, that you can't do that. I want all of you to look for her new book, that's coming out in July. July, what is it? July 23rd, I think you said.
July 24th.
July
Yeah.
24th. The power of solitude, alone but not lonely. That will be her new title. You can check her out. Please, please, please. She has a children's book, which also talks about self-love. So you want to make sure your children get it. She has poetry, she has written word, she has inspirational, and all of it is to benefit you. So we want to thank you, Mahogany, for being a guest on our show. We want to thank you for being willing and open to a woman walking up to you in the middle of you trying to get things together, and she looked up and she just smiled. So I want to thank you for accepting the invitation. We appreciate
Of course, I appreciate you. It's always an honor to even be invited on any platform for me, honestly. So yes, I appreciate it.
We know that this won't be the last time, because you're going to have so much ahead of you to come, that we're going to make sure that we stay in touch, that we keep pushing it. So with that being said, good night, audience. We thank you for tuning in. We love you all. Take care and have a good evening.